previewing it when you download
No,
it.
well, I don't want to download it.
I usually download it.
Yes.
Okay, good evening, councillors, and welcome to the Sandwich Tollbridge Fund Museum and Archive Committee tonight, this evening. Item number 1 is apologies for absence received, please, Town Clerk.
Thank you, Chair. We have Councillor Marie for a work commitment, Councillor Mallett for a travel commitment, Councillor Fortescue for a travel commitment, and Councillor Ungerson for a travel commitment, and also Councillor Morehouse for a work commitment.
Thank you very much. Very depleted. Item number 2, declarations of interest. This is to receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of business to be transacted on the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? That's no. Thank you, Jim. Public participation. A 20-minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting in respect of business on the agenda. Individual representation should not exceed 5 minutes. Written notice of the desire to exercise the right to speak together with the topic to be addressed must be given to the Town Clerk at least 4 hours in advance. Did we have
no request?
Thank you. Item number 4, minutes of the Museum and Archive Committee meeting. Members to receive and approve the minutes from the Museum and Archives meeting which took place on Wednesday the 24th of April 2024. I'm quite happy to propose these minutes. Do we have a seconder? Thank you very much. That's Councillor Ripley as a seconder. Thank you for that. All those in favour? Oh,
sorry, just going fast pace. It wasn't mentioned that I'm here as
Yes.
a substitute, so
Yes.
I think it might be worth mentioning that in
Yes.
terms of the minutes. I'm not a member of the committee, but I've
No.
been. It's been.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
substitute. It's been.
Put in
Through
place.
the right process, shall we say? I'm just
for the members of the public, who are you deputising for?
Councillor Mallett.
There you go.
Councillor Mannix.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour of the minutes as proposed and seconded?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. Item number 5, minutes of the Museum and Archive Committee meeting. Members to receive and approve minutes of the Museum and Archives meeting which took place on Wednesday the 24th.
Yes, it's 2 sets of minutes to receive
Oh,
and
right.
approve.
My eyesight isn't
They
very
were
good.
both on the 24th, it was July.
Oh, that's July,
July.
sorry.
Yeah.
On the 24th of July 2024. So, do we have a proposer for those minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And a seconder for those minutes in July? It's Councillor Franklin. Thank you very much. And all those in favour, please show. That's unanimous.
Yeah.
Thank you. One
Yeah.
abstention there. Okay. Update on museum operations. Item number 6. Members to receive an update on museum operations from the museum coordinator. Thank you very much, Millie.
Okay. So the format is pretty much the same as it has been. Visitor figures, I think last meeting we didn't quite have enough figures to see where we were at because we started the year in April, but now we've got 6 months worth of figures. The target was 15,000 for the year. I think we won't quite reach that. I think we'll probably reach 14,000 based on how much we need for this year and then how much we actually had for the last 6 months last year. So we need just over 2,000 visitors for the remainder of this year, I think. And then, but last year we had about 4,000 visitors for the remainder of that year. So the user development plan has this graph, but I've actually put it into this report just to visualise, sort of show visually where we're at. So you can see when the museum reopened in its first full year was 2018 with the way it looks now after the grant that we received. and you can see the changes and obviously the effect of the pandemic, but we are gradually growing. We won't reach the figures that we got to before pandemic, I don't think, but I think we will have quite a good increase compared to last year. Donations and income, we are doing slightly better than last year, but not hugely, I don't think. There is an attachment here with the figures, mostly to demonstrate the kind of the how these figures get calculated. So these are based on my first initial count and look through of the money. But I explained in the last meeting that I'm working out the best system for reporting them, because we take donations through the card system, through the till and cash. So if it comes through with a card, then a fee gets taken off of it, so it's calculating that fee. And then there's also donations for the Roman bowl, which we might remove because we now own it, so I'm not sure if we need that there because we have money ring fenced for its conservation. And then there's also cash donations and cash income. So I just tried to sort of explain what those figures, how those figures work out. And this should hopefully work in the future. They're not always completely exactly what goes into the bank account, because it is the first initial count of it, and then obviously it gets checked by other members of staff before it ends up in the bank account. Although I think there's not often huge issues with the figures. It's slightly complicated to work out the figures once they are on the kind of banking system, because of how they get deposited. They're often kind of in a lump sum, so this is quite useful hopefully to see what's happening per month. So we started a project to get some new merchandise, which I just wrote a little update in there. It's selling better than I thought it was, so that's good. We still have a little way to go before we have covered the cost of that, but we've done over half of the cost of that. We've earned that back as so that should as a profit, I think. So we hopefully will have made that money soon. Probably not by the end of the year, I'd say, but probably early next year, and then half of that money or so will go into just perhaps looking at new merchandise. What else? I have also put a note on here about publications. This is in relation to the shop again. One of my volunteers actually asked about the Sinkports exhibition, and it sparked the idea that having researched and written all of that information, we might be worth using it in some other way to make a kind of booklet or something that we can then sell, especially as we've got the collection items, so we can photograph them and include them as well. So that was a thought for the future. Social media figures, again, this shows the breakdown of our figures, but it's very similar to the last time in that the more we post, the better the figures are. So it really it relies on my capacity to be able to do that as to whether things increase or not, I think. But they have got some other projects to think about engagement in other areas or different types of audiences, or different age ranges of audiences. Research inquiries, there's a little list here of the inquiries we've had over the last few months. We had a pause on them again because of capacity, but people are very interested in doing research, so I still have taken quite a few of them. And we now have those volunteer roles, 2 research roles. They've only done one session, but hopefully they will settle in and sort of get to grips with that, and we might then start doing some promotion once they're settled in. into sort of to share that we are open to take more inquiries and encourage people to be in touch. And the volunteer team, there's been some movement around various kind of roles. So we have had a regular Thursday slot was filled. Some people giving someone's given notice that they're leaving. We've had a couple more shifts filled. Just movement really around, and we've recruited 4 people in the last few weeks actually. And so we have a total of 31 volunteers when the new recruits all settle in and get started. The volunteer policy has been shared with all the volunteers. Most of them have, I've got written agreement to it. I just have a couple to chase or to discuss with them. Collections management. So we have done, last time I reported it, we'd done 7,500 entries in the inventory. We've now done 8,300, probably slightly more than that. Because it's been a while since I wrote the agenda. Accession registers have been transcribed. As far as I'm aware, all 3 books have been finished, which is great. That's a really important part of that work, is having them, as having a backup of them and having them in a digital kind of format. So that would be really useful. I mean, it's useful now, but it would be very useful when we get to working through documentation. And then temporary exhibition. So it was requested that we have some information about how the temporary exhibitions, the D-Day exhibition, the effect it had. So I've just got this information, which is from the user development plan, but it works through the survey results that sort of were associated with when that exhibition was on. There were a few things to highlight. So not many people, I don't think this was based, it was quite a small sample size of people that responded to it, but we did notice differences in where people were coming from and perhaps why they were coming to the museum. So a bit more, it seemed to me there was a little bit more interest from people locally, which is one of these things that we've been talking about a lot, is encouraging repeat visits from people that are in the local area, and how we do that. And it's usually new things to see, which this seems to show. And the final thing was that we've got the Sinkports exhibition on at the moment. It's extended until December, so hopefully that will encourage people to come in and increase our visitor numbers. And accreditation, the museum development officer said that the Arts Council was about 9 years behind. So we might be waiting longer than I thought, but all of the policies and plans should still be in place, so it's not going to slow down work. We still should have these things to make sure we're ready correctly. And the forward plan, so there's a planning agenda, planning documents on this agenda, so hopefully the forward plan, if everything is okay with those plans, the forward plan will be on the next agenda. That's my aim. The access plan should also exist, but we have to do an access audit by an external professional. There's a little project available through South East Museums Development that I have applied to be a part of. They only pick 6 museums, but the fact that we haven't had a proper access plan in quite a long time might kind of be a good thing in that sense, that we will get to do that. So we would get a free access audit from that, and then the chance to apply for some funding to help on that work. So otherwise, the access plan under access and the forward plan will be basically to do the audit and do the access plan, and that will be developed probably later next year. And then the last few things, we had a couple of events. So we had Sir Roger Manwood School partnership, they developed a theatre piece, which they did on the 15th. So I had, this agenda went out before that happened. So I've written in here that we had about 40 people. We actually ended up with about 60 people, and it was really good. And they are hoping, I think, to work with us on a similar project next year. And then we had the art exhibition as well, which again went really well. We had a sort of open evening for that. And there was about 25 people there. I think about 25, that the museum felt quite full, I think, and everyone seemed to enjoy it, and the people that made the artwork were very happy as well, so it went really well. That's that for that update. I think, have I got any? No, that's everything.
Super. Thank you very much for that update. I'd like to say that I attended both the Sir Roger Manwood's school, the drama play, and also the art exhibition. I thought those were both excellent and extremely well organised, so that's very good. Would you be willing to take any questions from the committee at all on your report?
That's fine.
So is that okay? Did any members of the committee have any questions for Millie at all on her report? Councillor Tuka?
Yes, so just a couple of questions. Great to see that the increase in visitors represents around about 20% year on year, which is great. So my question was related to the temporary exhibition space. Have you identified whether that space has contributed to that increase itself? And there is a supplementary question around the fact that you were given 6 months to have that space available, when probably you'd benefit more from it being much longer term. You haven't lost sight of the need to come back to the council to look for beyond the 6 months?
So on this agenda, there's a project about a Liverpool loan which would require the use of that space, and that is purely to have a discussion about that, because I haven't been, I don't think, present in a committee meeting where we've talked about that. And to just make people aware of it more than anything. I know that the committee can't make that decision, but I think it's important that people have an awareness of that project and how important it is. I think the decision, so the town clerk agrees that we need a decision about that, the use of that space. I know, so this current exhibition, it was one that it was in relation to Speakers' Day and things like that. It seemed like a good opportunity. And I had thoughts in mind of what might come after that, but because I was aware that the 6 months was ending and that a new decision might be made, I just couldn't commit lots of time to a new exhibition when actually I might not have that space. But I think there's plenty of things that we could do and kind of use it for. And I
So
think
you have a
it
demand for the space for the future?
I mean, I think the thing that's important to bear in mind, and this comes up also in the user development plan, is that repeat visits rely on new things to see, because why would you come and see something? And the museum is great. It doesn't allow very easily for changes, though. The way it was designed, it makes it quite difficult to change things in the museum. And I think, there are little changes that could be made in there, but not on that kind of scale in that way. But I think we have a lot of history here, and we have a lot of collections, and we have lots of ideas and things to explore. And so, but we need that space to do it. So I don't think I've put it on the user development plan again. I've moved into exploring some other areas of work that we can be doing, which we should do anyway, and I think are important in the meantime, because there are other areas to focus on until there's a decision about that space.
Thank you. So that's great. If you don't mind, I've got a second question, which is completely unrelated to the first question. Social media, and whether you evaluated the impact that has on visitors. The reason I mentioned that is looking at the reach of some of the figures are not massively impressive, and I say that in the sense of trying to be helpful. And I just wonder, are there different ways? So for example, on Instagram, using reels as opposed to stories has a much greater reach. At the weekend we had an antiques fair. We did a reel from that, and you know, an antiques fair is an antiques fair, it's, you know, not, but it had a reach of 6,000
Yeah.
just off one reel.
Mhm.
So there's opportunities here. I think they're increasing the footprint of the great things you have to offer.
Yeah, so that is again, that's in the user development plan, that's a lot of the work that we're talking about is digital things that we can be doing. It includes the website as well as social media and things. In relation to that, what I will say is that I don't have any, actually I do have some data on this, it's in the development plan as well. Our audience, and so obviously I said about repeat visits, bringing in a local community, our audience on Facebook and Instagram is very local.
Yes.
So the local people see our posts, but again, if we don't have new things to see, that doesn't transfer into a visit to the museum. It doesn't kind of translate in that way. And so that is one of those issues, but I think I've been thinking a lot about audiences in relation to younger people, which is in the planning documents, and also just further afield. A lot of our visitors are tourists from different places, and I think
it seems very small percentage of actually being non-UK based visitors. I was surprised at that. Would have expected to see more. So I think it's around about 5%.
on social media.
No, visitors to the actual museum.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. Usually, I think it tends to be. It might be slightly different, but it tends to be that it's the outside of Kent and outside of the UK are more likely to visit us compared to immediate community or kind of within the Kent. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's
I think Councillor Ripley has a question.
No, well, I just wanted to comment about the visitor makeup, Millie, because when I did volunteer on a Sunday afternoon, I could virtually guarantee that significantly more than 5% of the visitors were from abroad. Why that isn't registered or hasn't come across, I'm not sure. But regardless of that fact, there are a lot of, without being able to give you any sort of reasonable percentage, there's certainly more than 5%.
I just would like to highlight that is the percentage, and again, I'd have to have a look at the plan again, because there's a lot of different bits of the survey within that, but that's the percentage of people that answer the survey, not visitors.
Which is
and
a very small percentage.
There's a lot
overall,
of things to bear in mind, I think, and that is part of the planning is firstly having a new survey, because I think from analysing it actually there's some better questions to be asking, and also how it is made available to people, because there's an element of bias from the volunteers and from people self-selecting whether they want to do it or not, and lots of different things that play into whether someone's going to do the survey or not.
I'm sorry, I was going to say just language is a major problem. They might not be confident in writing in English or whatever. I think that plays a significant part.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Americans coming in, because a lot of them are on the cruise ships as well, so time is critical, so they sort of come in, whiz in and whiz out, and hopefully they come back when they have more time, but they don't answer the survey.
No, that's right.
Is there an ability to do the survey electronically at all, like via QR
I
code?
did for a while, but we had not a lot of people doing it. We had far more paper versions being answered. But again, it's one of those things that's in the planning to, when we make a new survey, to think about how we share it with people.
Okay then, thank you very much for that. And thank you for all the hard work that you've put in, Millie. It's been absolutely fantastic, and obviously there's a large number of contributing factors, at the moment. So it's a bit like with the cost of living crisis and things like that. I've seen figures, or tourism figures, say that there's been a drop in staycations as well as people going abroad. So it is a very difficult market in which to make expansion in. So what you have done has been fantastic. So thank you very much for that. I believe we're asked to, The committee are asked to receive and note this report, update on museum operations. I'd like to propose noting the report. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Chuthman. Thank you very much. And all those in favour of noting this report? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 6 is, oh no, sorry. Item number 7 is collections, care and conservation plan. Members to receive the museum's collections, care and conservation plan for 2024 to 2029, and a decision is required on this. This is attachment number 4 and 4A. And I will be asking, Millie, did you want to do an introduction at all to this, first of all?
Yep.
And then I'll open the floor for any questions or queries, if that's okay.
So the collections, care and conservation plan is required for accreditation, and it's the plan that we should have anyway. It will feed into the forward plan, so the items on here will then be separated, probably under a heading of collections in forward plan. Our consultant had a look at the documentation plan, which is later on in the agenda, and so this plan is made in a similar format to that, really, because I developed that plan and she said, yeah, that looks fine, so did it in the same similar way. This is basically based on, there's a set of benchmarks in collections care, and so all that has been done here is that the museum has just scored against those, and how we're doing with achieving them, and then all of the things that we are partially achieving or not achieving were then just put into a plan with some notes against why that is or what could be done, and then that was formed into a kind of quite simple table, just the task and the timescale. In the forward plan it will have all the other headings, like the budgets that it comes from and who's leading on it and who's supporting on it and things like that. And then there are some sections in here that are highlighted, and they are sections that cross maybe out of my remit and into sort of things that maybe the property manager might have some involvement in, or might be in discussion with him about, for the town clerk as well.
Super, thank you very much on that. That's very good. So I'm opening the floor to questions. Did anybody have any questions or queries on the conservation care and conservation plan at all?
Well, I was just going to ask about the books. You've got a lot of historic books, and it seems it's just being hidden away. But I would like to see the Mayor's Parlour, if we could have a nice bookcase there with some of the, the really nice books on display, because it's a bit bland, the Mayor's Parlour, isn't it? It'd be nice to show someone a really nice book to say, oh, look what we've got here.
In particular, Councillor Bragg's
Yeah, the
books
Council
would be
Bragg's
nice,
book,
wouldn't they?
yeah.
If that's possible, yeah, that'd be very.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
we'd
possible.
have to think about conservation and how they're
Mhm.
cared for and
Like
lighting
black
and
what
things
we've got.
like that.
Yeah.
But it is a potential, it's a thought. We have to assess the environment and things
Of
ideally,
course.
because
Yeah.
we're working to, within this is dealing with the environment in the collection store, mainly the museum actually, and I think it's best to probably focus on that before we extend it outside of
Mhm.
those rooms. We will have to look at these rooms, the lighting in these rooms at some point, because we have collection items, paintings up.
Okay.
So perhaps
Yeah.
it's something for the future that I will definitely bear in mind as an idea.
Indeed.
Sorry, yes, that's just triggered a thought, particularly about in terms of the paintings. The weekend at the Antiques Festival, we had somebody who was a restorer, and he saw the paint. He was located in the jury room, and he was very surprised at the need to have them cleaned, shall we say.
Yep.
And that's probably not a technical term, but he did say they would look fantastic if they were properly cleaned.
Indeed.
I'm sure he said a different word. But,
Have you been watching your Fake or Fortune?
well, exactly. Who knows what's behind the dirt? But yes, the very dirty, should we say.
The paintings that used to be in here, the Mayor's paintings, they were cleaned by an artist over at Gobley Hill at Wingham.
Oh,
And I remember he didn't have a lot of insurance, so he could only take one painting away at a time. And one of them was actually chalk, and it's brilliant colours. But of course, they was all took down because of that forecourt work, because they're worried about vibration.
Oh, okay.
And I'd love to see those mayor's paintings come back here in the council chamber.
Indeed.
You remember
That
that
would
one?
be, I do indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, she-
Perhaps that chap would offer to clean them for free if we had a.
There's no idea. Free store for £30.
We could have a free store.
Free store, yeah.
Free store.
If we don't ask, we don't get, do we? No. Okay then. So if there's no more questions, I'd like to propose acceptance of the conservation care and conservation plan. Do I have a seconder for that at all? Councillor Ripley's, yeah. All those in favour? Yep. That's unanimous, that's passed, thank you very much. Item number 8, podcast project and partnership with Canterbury Christchurch University. Members to receive a report about podcast project from the museum in partnership with Canterbury Christchurch University. Decision is required on this. These are attachments 5 and 5A. Once again, Millie, did you want to just give an overview on this at all? Because you did brief me on it and I was quite intrigued by it. So.
So I have a volunteer who has been assisting on this. That's the first thing I should say. She did want to come and be in the public part of the meeting. And mentioned that to her, but she unfortunately is not very well. But she did pass on her thanks and said that she wanted to be here. I have been looking at the user development plan, and we have been thinking about ways of taking the museum outside of the physical space. Sometimes even the idea of a museum can act as a barrier to people, and so it was sort of thinking about how we can take information and collections and stories from our history outside of that space. And we have a lot of items that are really interesting that maybe are not as interesting to look at. They might be documents that contain some really interesting stories about people or parts of our history that kind of all look the same, and to display them, that they're not necessarily very easy to read, and they also look very similar and perhaps aren't that engaging. But what we can do is we can create digital content about them. We can do that in writing, which we do in social media posts and things, but also the idea of this is that we have people talking about those items. And so it's not really a new thing for museums. This is quite, I guess the pandemic caused a lot of museums to start thinking about these ideas. I spoke to Canterbury Christchurch University. They've got a new master's course that they're developing. They have a few other courses, and a history course as well, that they have a module about, I think it's communicating the past. It's about how we talk about history, and it involves a podcast element as an option, and they are interested in partnering with the museum on this. So the students that select that module, or any other students, I suppose, if they want to do it separately to their university studies, could fill a role within this project. So my volunteer that has kind of done some work on this will be kind of working quite heavily on it, but we'll have other people there as well. So the idea was that she would be the main person that does the talking and that hosts it, but then other students will come in and perhaps research and write scripts based on collection or history, and will be part of that, part of the recording of it. And we are hoping to do a first season in 2025, of ideally 12 episodes, but we are looking at an idea of taking feedback or having comments to encourage people to engage. So we might have there might be some movement on that. We might have a kind of different sort of episode. And the subject matter's a mixture of different ideas, so it's things that people ask us about. It's also things that are obviously our major selling points, like the Magna Carta, and also things that are in the collection store that aren't on display. And I have lots of ideas about the project, so if it goes well, I have thoughts about potential people that might maybe come on as guests that are kind of experts in certain areas of history, or people that I've spoken to about different bits of the history here. So within this there is a new volunteer role that I've added. It's a digital content assistant, that's what I've called it. It's specific to this, so anyone sort of volunteering or doing work with this project would have that title, perhaps with a slightly more specific role within it for the purposes of helping them with work experience, really. But then the idea is that then under this role we can also recruit students that might like to do some social media or marketing, or might like to write some content for the website about the collection. So just general, it's quite broad, just to cover digital related work. So that's
Thank you very much. So that's an excellent idea. It's another good way to explore how to get the documents and exhibits within our museum and archives out to the members of the public. So I applaud you for doing that, and also this idea of having a digital volunteer digital content assistant. I think that's a good idea, because that gives the responsibility to one person to follow through on the project. I think the only query I had was, obviously, you know, I know you're going to say yes to this one, but will before the podcasts are actually uploaded or what have you, will they be vetted? Will they be somebody to check the content of them if they're done by students?
so. What we would do is we have a few ideas of subject matter, and then we have a few blank spaces, and they would work with the collection that we have here, and they would do research. Me and my volunteer would be basically people to fact check everything. We'd have guidelines around what is appropriate, obviously, to talk about, and that is kind of how we would do it. So it will be based on specific subjects, and also I imagine the university would want to check through that and put through episodes first when they're public.
Excellent.
I also didn't say, which I should just add, that it seems quite possible that they're on board for us to go there and use their equipment. They have a studio to record, so that's how we would do that. I didn't mention that.
That's good. That's excellent news. I had two. I had Councillor Black first of all.
Thank you. I've got three questions. I mean, I listen to podcasts a lot. 35 to 40 minutes needs a heck of a lot of material, doesn't it? And I'm a little bit sceptical that you'll be able to sustain that length of thing. I mean, most podcasts, the ones that seem to have really an effective series, apart from, you know, some comedian standing up or whatever, they tend to be a bit more on the shorter side of the history of Britain, Reconquista and things like that. So I'm very supportive of this, but I'm not convinced that some of this is quite I think it's, remember, Neil McGregor did 100 things, and he was using about 15 minutes a time. And he, of course, had the resources of a world-class museum, and someone to write it for him. He didn't write that himself, clearly. So I'm concerned there. I was intrigued with what's housekeeping from the museum under episode flow.
Oh, that's what so that is, it's slightly different because we think we would record them all in one go, not on a kind of schedule, but release them obviously every week. That was, the idea is that is basically what's going on in the museum. What are we doing? And that's slightly harder to achieve if we record them all in one go, but it might be this year we've got these projects coming up and talking, just a little brief kind of thing, we've got these events or we've got this temporary exhibition or here's what's going on, to give people an idea of what's happening behind the scenes. So it'd probably be that I would put some bullet points together for that and for someone to read out, just to remind people that this is from the museum.
And the third issue is what platform would you host it on? Are you talking people like Patreon or Apple or what?
I think it would be uploaded to the usual sites. I think we had a look at, you can upload to Spotify, and I assume Apple Podcasts probably works the same, but I haven't looked into it. But I know that my volunteer, she showed me Spotify. She was like, yeah, you can just make an account and do it that way. And then obviously we'd be promoting it. I didn't add in as well that there's, because I liked part of one of the things that's on the agenda is the website, we would then have the transcript and all our sources on the website, so people can go and explore that. And we could, if we talk about things within the museum, we can have a QR code that connects to the website, so people, if they want to learn more, they can then go and listen to it. So we can kind of hopefully take visitors and sort of transfer them to the podcast and digital things that we do, but also take people that maybe engage digitally and hopefully transfer them to visitors to the physical spaces as well. And I'll just mention the length. Actually, we've got, so we have a rough idea of a script, and we would do a kind of a record that's not going to be public, to have a look at how the timing and how it all works and the flow and the tone, and it might be that we reduce that length. I think my volunteer was probably thinking more what you were thinking, but I'm just me trying to push things.
You're all sinning slightly. No, I think it's really good, and it really could expand the audience very well. So, although my questions may sound negative, they're not.
Thank you very much. Thank you for those. Councillor Chuka, did you have a question?
Well, I'm very supportive of the idea, and I think in terms of what you've said, it was about how you're going to get the reach, etc. I think you've covered that, so I'm happy to keep quiet. I'll vote for it. Exactly.
So recommendations are that members are asked to approve the above project for a podcast from the museum in partnership with Canterbury Christ Church University. Members are asked to approve the role description of the volunteer digital content assistant as well. Did I hear you say you were proposing this?
Propose it, yes.
Okay, and Councillor Ripley seconding that. All those in favour, please show. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 9 is user development plan, and members to receive the museum's user development plan for 2024 to 2029. These are attachments 6 and 6A, and a decision is required on this. So once again, do you need to give an overview on this one?
This is again a requirement from accreditation. I'm quite used to calling it the audience development plan, so I might have written that somewhere else, but generally people talk about users and non-users. It contains a breakdown of our survey data, visitor information as well, and kind of some analysis to think about who visits the museum and therefore who doesn't, and how we reach those people. So basically what I've done is we have a general section which is thinking about our targets for visitor figures, so that falls in under user development, and then data collection, which is what I talked about, updating the survey to make it, I think, more useful. It was based on a previous version that was used before I started my role here, and it was kind of developed because we really needed to capture that data, but I think having analysed it, there's some better things to be asking. We could be asking people, are you on holiday, for example, like why are you in this area, which that would be very useful to understand if people are actually tourists, because the information I'm getting from it is that they are, but I'm just assuming based on postcodes and things like that. So I think that would be useful. I've put in children's resources, so thinking about informal activities to deepen engagement with families and people that visit and maybe encourage them. In relation to this, a student who did some work experience here with the University of Kent scheme that we are part of. She studies graphic design, and she is doing a project for her module, and she's just been in touch to talk about developing children's resources as part of her university project for us. So we're just starting that. I've only had an initial chat with her about what that might involve, but that's great. So that will hopefully result in some things that will encourage people to visit with their children, or at least, I think, visit with families and children, but also just stay longer. I think that's also quite important. We have young adults, we also have ethnic diversity. These are under one category at the moment, I mean, because the digital work obviously reaches beyond the museum, but also I found through having group visits from colleges and universities that they tend to be coming to universities from lots of different places, and we actually have kind of an audience that is ethnically diverse from those younger people visiting. So they're kind of grouped together at this stage. Usually we might think about projects to engage with underrepresented audiences. Sometimes museums think about hidden histories and maybe parts of the history that might have not been talked about a huge amount, and they kind of work with different people on those things, those projects. I don't think we're there yet, because we need our collection. We need to know what we have to think about maybe what bits of history haven't been included as much in the collection. So there is a note, I think, in here about that, but it's just not something that I think we can do yet. Local community is in here, engaging with residents. There's again, I think the temporary exhibition space is the first step, or maybe the kind of easiest step, and so I've kind of put that towards the end, I think, of the planning document, because that's a decision that is not for me to make. And then within here we've got marketing, so branding, signage, content shared by the museum and the website. So we've got a project hopefully to develop a website, which is later in the agenda. I've just started the steps with the branding project that we agreed would take place. So hopefully we'll have that sometime early in the new year, and we can start kind of rolling out that kind of branding and making it a bit more consistent. And then future projects, which is just future ideas that I've had that might be adjusted, and we'll see where we get to, or kind of what the new data says. This is kind of subject to change in that we've done the first 2 years or so, 3 years, which will be in the forward plan, but obviously we'll be collecting new data all the time, so things will change. But there's a hope that these digital projects with the university, they diversify the volunteer team, because we have more of a mix of ages, but they also hopefully will encourage younger people to engage with us, because of kind of seeing themselves represented in the people that are working in the museum.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Ripley, you have a question?
No, I don't have a question, I have a comment, and it's one I've made many times before, so I apologise for that. However, I think one of the main things that we need to do in terms of getting local people or visitors to the town into the museum is putting signs outside the museum that are obvious and eye-catching, and because at the moment I've had people coming in when I've been there that have lived in the town for years, that didn't even realise there was a museum there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's such an obvious thing that we need to do, and yet we never seem to get around to doing something about it. I don't mean you, Millie, I mean us as a
Collective.
collective, yeah.
So the branding that we talked, so the project to figure out the kind of the logo and the colours that the museum uses, that is, I'm hoping that will be done by early next year. So in terms of rolling out the new branding, including signage is I've put down under March. So I want us to have this kind of guide that tells us what colours and all of that stuff that is just consistent across everything, makes things so much easier, and then that will be used in the signage, and that will be a project that is, I agree, it needs to be done. I don't want to spend money on something that actually then we're like, oh, but it doesn't match what we've decided we should represent the museum. That's purely it, but it will happen hopefully by spring next year. That's the hope.
That's good. Councillor
I just
Chair.
wonder, have we, apologies if we have we got a dedicated publicity material in the paper form for the museum?
We have a leaflet.
Yes, and is that, sorry, that's great, that's good.
Oh.
Is that linked into the distributions you've done as well
Yes,
around some?
I always take the
museums
museum
included,
stuff
yeah,
around.
yeah. I think it's about getting the branding right's great, and
Yeah.
signage here's great.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, a lot of people come to the town, and unless they actually physically are standing outside and notice the signage, they aren't necessarily going to jump at the idea of coming to the museum itself. It's just,
I think it's a mixture of both, isn't it? You know, you need
Yeah.
a big sign out there
You do.
saying, look, we've got a museum
You do.
here.
Sorry, could I just add in that something I think I have highlighted in here is, and I'm not sure the best way of working this out because we have done a resident survey and not many people answered it, but thinking about how the residents get their information, because print obviously requires more funding, but it might be that that's the way of doing things. There's other options as well about whether or not we have some kind of newsletter that's digital, but it's capacity and deciding. I think I'm very reluctant to start something if I feel very confident that I will be able to keep doing it and not not lose it to lots of other things.
Councillor Black has a question, and Councillor Franklin.
Can I ask two questions about the detail of the report? You've said in 18 to 34-year-olds that 20% were from outside of the UK. Is this for language schools, or is this people who are, because obviously that's a market that
Yes.
we don't get much money out of, and as a town guide you sort of think, okay, yes, it's a bit of a delicate point, but is that the language schools?
It will be, so that data is from the period when they visited, so it will include their information as well as anyone else that did the survey. It might not include all of their information, and it would include any other groups that visited that completed the survey. The idea was really just thinking about universities, colleges, places like that. Students travel from other places to study there, so then we kind of, by working with them, we are perhaps working with people that are not necessarily basically it's just a more potentially ethnically diverse kind of audience or group of people because they're from lots of different places, not just from here in this area.
Okay. The second thing actually that relates exactly to the next point I'm going to make, which is about the ethnic diversity. Has the museum got an answer to what about slavery and sandwich? Have we got an answer? I think I seriously think that's a fair priority. There are two very important documents that we have access to, which is one, the register of where all the ships went to, and secondly, which families received compensation in the 1830s. Now, there was nobody in Sandwich who received that. They did in Eastleigh, they did in Wingham, they did in Ramsgate. But it's a quick thing, and it allows you, because when we've got the town guides, we're now getting more people, say, from London who are much more diverse. And if you've got an answer straight away, it improves the discussion that you've got subsequently. Obviously, people in Britain indirectly benefited. The question is, was this a place that benefited directly? And I think on the ship side there is no evidence either, as far as I'm from the research I've looked at. But it might be something someone to have a look at, to have this ready to hand, so you've got a good answer, but an honest answer.
Thank you very much on that. And Councillor Franklin?
Yeah, I
did
was
you
just
have
going to say,
a question?
a lot of these people are on time, you know, like people on the cruise ships or other people walking around in tour groups, they might not have time to fill the surveys in. I just wonder whether the survey could be put on like a QR code, so they could do it when they on the ship or when they got home.
Yeah, yes, no. So I did have it as a QR code. There were not a huge amount of responses. I think one of the things that would be useful, and I think again this is in the document, is thinking about these groups that visit, because fairly often they do let me know they're coming beforehand. Some, well, not always, but quite a fair amount of them do. So it's perhaps a short survey that if I know in advance, I can say, you know, it's this many people coming from these areas, and it won't fit into this specific survey data, but it will fit into a different section that we can kind of take information from and look at. It's the same.
I saw a group of
small
12
groups.
people that had been shown around, and they just went out straight out the door.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought, and they looked like local people, so it might have been interesting to get feedback from them.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So I think there's different versions of surveys basically that we need, and to kind of properly capture that information. And that, I think I built that in there, different types of, for larger groups, I think it's in there about developing surveys, or just a couple of questions for whoever's organising the trip, if they get in touch.
Thank you very much for that. So the recommendation is that members are asked to recommend the approval of the museum's user development plan to the trustee. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Franklin, and the seconder. I'll second that. All those in favour of the development plan? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 10 is collections documentation plan. Members to receive the museum's collections documentation plan 2024 to 2029. Decision is required on this. This is attachment 7 and 7A. Once again, did you need to give a small overview at all on this?
Again, this is one of the other plans that is required for accreditation. This is quite simple in terms of it's so the museum is required to meet the 9 primary procedures within Spectrum, which is the national standard for collections documentation. So all I've done here is we've basically set out all of those requirements for each procedure and assess whether the museum has achieved it or not, and if it hasn't, then those points get put into a plan. So there's notes against sort of how we're doing with things, or whether we've managed it, or perhaps like we haven't, and that forms the plan. This is the one that our consultant has seen and said that it did everything it needed to do. Basically, the table with the task and the timescale, again, that would go into first 3 years. Will go into the forward plan with more information about budgeting, whether something's subject to funding, who's delivering it, resources, all sorts of information.
Excellent, thank you very much for that. And once again, it's a lot. Obviously, I can see it is. You've undertaken quite a lot of hard work on both these plans, and that's on top of the day job as well. So well done on that. I'd just like to thank you for that. Did we have any questions or queries on the collections documentation plan?
No.
If not, I'd like to. Recommendation is members are asked to recommend approval of the museum's collection and documentation plan to the trustee. I'm quite happy to propose that. Councillor Ripley is seconding that. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Item number 11 is the museum server, and this is attachment number 8. And members are to receive a report about the new server for the museum's collection museum software, and a decision is required on this, as I say, attachment number 8. Millie did have a separate briefing for me about this one, and I don't know if anybody has any questions or queries over this, but probably Councillor Franklin will also remember. I remember when this was bought quite some number of years ago, so I don't know if Councillor Franklin remembers that. So, but obviously it's on its last legs, and it is in due need of replacement. We've got recommendations from here which are members are asked to approve the museum coordinator's request to just do the beginning of the researching options for looking for an upgrade of the museum server. So that's the first item. So that's not to say that she's going to go out and buy it immediately, she's going to research it first. And then secondly, members are asked to give delegated power to the museum coordinator to apply for funding to cover the cost of the new server and the equipment for the museum, should any funding become available before the next committee meeting. And I think that's an excellent idea, that the museum coordinators not only highlighted that this equipment needs replacing, but that there could be possibilities of funding for the replacement as well. So, did anybody have a question?
Sorry, I have some verbal updates.
Oh,
to
thank
add
you.
in.
Please carry
I'm not
on.
sure if they're included in this. So we had a conversation about the collection database being available online in the last meeting, and so there was conversation about whether there was an interim option for how we deal with that. What I didn't mention in the meeting, I just didn't think of it, is that the collections management software is Spectrum compliant, meaning that it supports us in meeting those standards that I talked about in the last for the last report. So that's something that's quite key here that I didn't raise. So we use Modes. It's quite a standard museum bit of software. It doesn't allow for us to upload online, and that was really the issue. So the server has needed to be replaced for a while, but the problem was, if we replaced it with a server that supported Modes, we might then, in however many years' time, need a whole new CMS, which would require a new server, because the server that we bought wouldn't support the new CMS, and we wanted to put the collection online. What I figured out now is actually we could carry on using Modes, and then when we get to the point, if we get there, that we want to put the collection online, that database system, if that's how we choose to do it, doesn't need to be Spectrum compliant if its only purpose is to make the information available online. So we can carry on with Modes and get a server that will support it, and it sort of means that we don't have to make all those decisions now. I quoted £7,000 for a CMS called Axel in the meeting. I didn't have the quote in front of me, so I did put this information in here just to make everyone aware of what I was referring to. The conclusion really, so there is funding available. I thought there might be, which is why I put it in there, but I've since had a meeting about it. So South East Museums Development have £5,000 available, a grant for museums at risk. And so we can say that our collection documentation is at risk because of the server. What it hinges on is a decision on whether we can now go ahead with the server. So they know and they understand that this has been an issue for a couple of years, but the fact that it was up in the air about how we were going to use the CMS means that once the decision is made, then it's like, now it's at risk because we've decided this, and that would make us eligible for that funding, as providing I explain that in a way that's clear enough in the application. I also mentioned the collections computers in that meeting, and how they're quite slow, and they seem to think that these things kind of come hand in hand. If we could make that all fit into some kind of funded project. There's also a little bit of money from the collection store project that we could also kind of that could be our local kind of contribution, because they'll expect a percentage from the museum or from wherever, and there's money there that could act as that. So when we talk about a server, I think it might be easier. So we had a discussion with the mayor about clouds servers. Most will not run on a cloud. The application will not. But it can back up onto. So the backups can go onto a cloud system or a SharePoint or something similar. There's different ways of doing it, and there's also different other. I'm going to say now, I don't know all of the proper details. I'm not completely technical with it, so bear in mind you might ask questions I just don't know the answers to right now. But I know there's issues with there's Windows licenses, there's client access licenses, which can add to costs of things, and so there's different routes that we pick, which we have extra costs depending on how we choose to do it. It can run on a kind of device that is basically a decent computer that has Windows 11. The application can sit on there and connect to the local application or whatever on a laptop, and then obviously it's down to the amount of users we have through modes. I think this is the best option. However, there is another option, which is that we get a whole new CMS and that does work on a cloud. But that obviously delays things, and this funding is available, but it's the deadline. It's kind of available on a rolling basis, except they want applications, sort of the deadline is towards the end of January, I think. So with that in mind, I think it's easy to carry on with modes. Also, a lot of the collection is already on modes. And it just sort of might be easier. It's one that I've used in the past, or I'm used to this. I've done this sort of project before, so
That's good.
there's a lot of information. Hopefully that makes
And
sense.
also, you did tell me in the briefing that we had that this system is exceptionally cheap, the mode
Yes.
one. So I think you gave me a comparison,
Yeah.
and it was massively
Yes.
a lot cheaper than the competitors, so which is a good reason to stick with it. And basically, there's some of the studies, some of the training I've been doing this week is, if something is actually working and it's working well, then there's no necessity to actually change it at all. So I think we've got to be clear about this project, because we're being presented with a server project, to then also split the project into looking into a CMS system as well would actually complicate it and actually slow it down. So I would say stick with the replacement of the server, and then we could perhaps review the CMS system at a later stage, particularly if the funding is available.
So just to add in, so the reason that basically, so if we are going to change the CMS, I would advise doing it before we get a server, only because different types of CMS will work on different types of operating systems. So Mo's works on Windows, it won't work on Mac or Linux or something else.
No.
So but then another type of CMS might not work on Windows. So that's the issue we have. There are types of CMS that are similar cost to modes that I asked the museum development officer, and she said really it's what you need it to do. I said to many people use these other ones that I hadn't heard of, and she said, I mean, some people use them, I can look into it, but what do you need it to do? Basically, does it do what you need? And modes does. So we could switch to one that would, I think, completely sit on a cloud server, but it will slow down the project, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah.
And also I might just add the delegated powers part. That would be in conversation with the town clerk and the mayor. I would not apply for funding for something unless I understood it to definitely work properly.
No, of course. Thank you for that. Councillor Black, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. I got the impression, perhaps wrongly, that if we're to apply for any funding, that's a pretty tight schedule, and it seems a bit daft when you've got so many other things on your plate to try to do that. Does this funding occur on a regular annual basis? And I appreciate the new government, a lot of things that we assumed were going to be rolled over may not be, as they're trying to reallocate resources. But is it something that really perhaps we should look at in the first or the second quarter of next year? Because I'm a little bit surprised that there aren't more systems which are really updated to work on the cloud. I'm a bit surprised that, but I know the local museums do have funding issues, and there's no question about that. So I just wonder if it's something that we perhaps need to revisit. We're not going to hit this deadline of January of next year. That would crack us. Try to do that. But is it something that occurs on a regular basis?
I would have to ask South East Museums. The way their funding works is that they get a grant from the Arts Council every year, and then they choose how they use that, and they distribute it in through grants or training and various things to museums in the local different areas. So obviously we fit under the South East area. I would have to ask them if they're likely to do this type of funding again in the new year. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely. I don't know.
No, I think
Basically,
that's
I'd have
fair
to
enough.
ask them. But yeah, I'm keen to sort of start working on this project as quick as possible. A lot of the reason that obviously my capacity is taken up is the planning documents, which are on this agenda. So the only other big document now actually that needs to be done, apart from the access plan, but that would be on the thought plan, is the thought plan. And obviously the majority of it is in these documents already. So I am sort of happy to put my time into this project. It is something that I've kind of worked on a similar project before, and have access to people with knowledge, obviously within the organisation as well. So I'm keen to try, if that is something the committee allows, obviously.
Indeed, Councillor Franklin.
I think we should follow the recommendation, because you're saying to look at it, so it could take
Exactly,
quite a
that's
while, so
what
she
I
just
said
starts
initially.
looking now. Yeah.
Indeed, yeah.
There's no need to delay, isn't it? Just already research.
That's it, yeah, indeed. This is really to get the research done and get things underway.
Yeah.
As it does say in the museum coordinator's conclusion there, that it is a major priority, and with these things, if things aren't addressed quite quickly, there could be all sorts of problems later on. If the museum coordinator has got the capacity to continue with this, then I would like to propose that this does go ahead, and that we do give delegated power to apply for funding to cover the cost of the new server, but obviously with reference back to the town clerk and the mayor as to putting in any application.
I can start the work and try and we can see, if it gets to near that deadline, then it's not going to be a sort of thorough and application, or that I don't feel confident in it, then that's fine. But we will have done that, that work.
Exactly.
I'm very aware that the museum probably can't afford a new server by itself, and I'm not sure what other funding will be available. But I will ask South East Museums if they think, they probably won't commit to an answer, but I can try and ask them that, or see if they had it previously, the likelihood of that.
I think that's the best option, actually. So as I say, I'd like to propose that the two recommendations, that the museum coordinator begin the researching options, and that she give delegated power to actually apply for the funding that she's got access to, if that's okay. So are you seconding that, Councillor Franklin? Thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. And then item number 13 is to update the museum's website. Members to receive a report regarding an upgrade to the museum's website. And this is attachment number 9, and a decision is required on this one as well. So
propose that we accept this because it's WordPress is a standard that's universally used, and the cost argument is compelling in terms of remaining with the alternative. So I'd like to propose that, but maybe comments.
Thank you very much. Were there any comments, Councillor Black?
Yes, just one thing. Why is it going to be .co.uk and not .org? Because the vast majority of museums use .org.
Our domain is .co.uk, the current domain. That's why I haven't suggested. That's not a suggested change. That's just what it is currently. We can change it to .org probably.
I'm just wondering what message it's sending out. If it's a trivial item, fair enough, but I'm not sure it's sending the right message. If you look at places like the British Museum or Glasgow Museums, they're all .org.
I can see if it's available. But yeah, it's always been .co.uk.
I
haven't
understand,
suggested a change. But yeah, I'll see if .org is an option to transfer to.
Okay, we've had a proposer, and I'm quite happy to second this. Is everybody in favour? Yeah, that's good. That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Am I allowed to, I don't know if am I allowed to ask if .org is available? Am I allowed to ask if I can just transfer that without another agreement?
Yeah, indeed.
Sorry.
Indeed, yeah, amendment to
Yeah,
that.
subject to any
That's it.
cost implications.
That's
Yeah,
right,
so,
yeah, subject to any
propose
cost
that we-
implications. Is everybody happy with that amendment
Yeah.
made by Councillor Black?
Yeah.
I'm still sorry, I'm behind the times, obviously. I'm wondering quite what the benefit of going to .org is, particularly if it costs more.
Could I answer that?
Yeah.
Indeed.
I think, to me, the use of co-UK for something like this sends the wrong message that we're a commercial organisation that is seeking to profit from this. I'm not sure that many museums perceive themselves that way, and I think it's much better for marketing purposes to call themselves .org. However, I'm certainly not going to go to war on it, but I'm not sure that it sends the right message to call ourselves .co.uk. I think places have moved on a lot, and .org is used much more by quasi-public bodies.
That's just dependent on the cost on that one, if that's okay. So, item number 13 is the loan of medieval pence box. Members to receive a report regarding the loan of the medieval pence box to the museum from the Church Conservation Trust. This is attachments 10 and 10A. Decision is required on this. For those of you that don't know or haven't seen it, this is in St Mary's Church, and goodness knows how long it's been there all of my life, so it's quite
Medieval.
Indeed, thank you. And of course it's something that I think Councillor Franklin mentioned as well, that when they have events in St Mary's Church, this particular item, which is of great antiquity and heritage, is quite often stood on and had glasses of drink and food and all sorts of things placed on it, and it should have sort of much greater care. And of course this is of a great initiative to take this forward, and recommendations are members are to approve the 5-year loan to the Museum of the Medieval Pence Box from the CCT, and asked to approve of the attached draft loan arrangement, which is attachment 10A as well. Hopefully you've been able to review that. So there. Do we have any questions? Or Councillor Franklin?
Yeah,
on this one?
just the other thing also is there's been some break-ins, hasn't there? There's been some damage to it, and that's why I'm really worried that it's going to get smashed up,
Yeah.
because it's not secure in that building. So it took me about 4 years to get this far, so I'm fully recommending this report that we get this loan to preserve it.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that.
So you second that. All those in favour? No? And that's That's unanimous, thank you very much for that one. Okay, and item number 14 is the Liverpool Loan Project, and this is members to receive a report about project with Ash Heritage Group and National Museums of Liverpool. This is attachment number 11. Did you need to just update us on this one?
Yeah, so this is mostly, as I said earlier, I know the committee can't make the decision about the temporary exhibition space, but I don't think we had this on an agenda when I've been present in the meeting. It might have been previously before the committee was meeting. It's only been briefly mentioned, I think, so not a full report. Ash Heritage Group and the curator at Liverpool are still on board with this project and are keen to see it through, as am I. But I think what I would really like is a decision from STBF and STC, just a final, so that I can say whether it will happen or it won't happen, because we sort of have discussions about it, and then it gets stalled for a while, and it's been stalled for years, and I would like basically for that decision to be made, whether it's a yes or a no, so that we can say for sure whether this will happen or not, and so that they can potentially explore other options aside from having it here in the museum, because it would be a really great project if it could happen. The reason I'm proposing it, so the Western Loan Programme will do some funding that's specific to this sort of project. So it's loans of objects from national museums to small museums. It's perfect funding for this project. I don't know if they're doing another round, but I do know they're doing a round in autumn 2025. So, and I have got a copy of their guidance. So we have lots of time to build a project that we could apply with, basically. It also, it'd be quite a major thing. We could build in not just an exhibition, but there'd probably be other events and things like that. So we'd have to talk about how audiences are benefiting and who we're reaching with the project. So there might be events and talks. I know there was some previously, quite a while ago, there's archaeologists that have been connected to the museum that I'm sure would be willing to talk about the collection. Ash Heritage Group have made a short film in relation to it. It's about 15 minutes long. It's really good. It starts with to explain where Ash is. It actually starts with shots of Sandwich, the streets. It'd be really nice to we could screen that as part of an event. We could maybe do some learning activities. It could be a really major thing, and it could also maybe extend out of the museum into tourism and thinking about how we encourage people to come and visit. But it hinges on that space, I think. It needs its own space to be in, I think. I'm not sure how else it would work. So again, it's not that the committee can make that decision. I just would like to put that information across
Thank you
to
very
everyone.
much for the overview. Councillor Black and
Thank
then
you.
Councillor Chilton.
What sort of artefacts are we talking about here? Do you know, Ellie?
Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah.
I know the Anglo-Saxon, but I keep it ranged from bones to sheep, could there's something to help it.
So they're Anglo-Saxon, so it's from an Anglo-Saxon burial, but there's in various items. So I know there's definitely probably one or two brooches that are really interesting. There'll be other similar items, and the person who Brian Fawcett, he was quite forward thinking in how he recorded his finds. So he has diaries with his sketches of these actual items and their measurements, which wasn't really something that was done at the time. And they have those books, and I'd really like to have those on display. We also have to think about how this supports our own collection, like how we can bring out some of our collection in relation to this.
Good.
And I know there's the Mayor Rolf, who also did similar work, and and then there's some other people associated with Sandwich that maybe did similar work, and I've been thinking about how we could make a story across these people. I think they were slightly different generations, but I'm keen to see if we can find something that says maybe one was inspired by the other or something to that effect. That's
Thank you. And Councillor Chuka?
Yes, so looking at the proposal in isolation, I think it would be amiss not to support it. However, in the background there is the other issue that has been parked for a long time around the location of the Visitor Information Centre. So I think we need to go through that issue and resolve it once and for all for this administration, because it's a little bit of a sore with some councillors, not me. And I think it will only throw itself up again as the issue.
Yeah.
And
it's more putting this information in front of the committee and making you aware of it, so that when that comes up, and I'm sure that some of this information and repeat visit information might be included in the report about that, but so that you have the information and an understanding of what how it would benefit the museum to have that space.
So it'd be good to know the timescales you're working to enable this to happen, because that should focus the minds on an issue that's just sitting there festering. Maybe that's too strong a word. It's an issue that's still there with some councillors.
True, thank you for that. Councillor Franklin?
Yeah, I think this is very important, because it's here, because there's been so many archaeological digs around it, Anglo-Saxon, we've known it, and for years I've known it's been at Liverpool installed, and it's really annoyed me that you go to Liverpool and you might have to get special permission to actually look at it. And I think it's wonderful that it's actually coming here to Sandwich. And it'd be nice really if you could have a word with Lord Northbourne and get the Fingalsham brochure at the same time.
Exactly.
That's what I was going to tap him up to, but he didn't turn up for that dinner, did he? But I think it's wonderful that he draw people in.
Thank you. And Councillor Ripley?
Yeah, just to say I completely agree with all of that. It would be a travesty not to encourage this, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
To, and Liverpool. But anyway, that's aside.
Can I? Sorry, I just was going to add in. Ash Heritage Group's film is about how it came to be in Liverpool.
Okay.
So it's a nice story. It's got archaeologists talking about it.
Is it YouTube?
It's good. No, they're saving it, I think.
that.
We're on a project over this.
So we've got a recommendation that the committee is asked to note the details of the Liverpool Loan project. Councillor Franklin's proposing. I'm happy to second that. And all those in favour, please show. And that's unanimous as well. Thank you very much, Councillor. And item number 15 is date and time of the next meeting is Wednesday the 29th of January 2025. So the first notification of a meeting next year.
Yes.
Town Clerk. would
Yeah,
you
I
like to-
just wanted to say I am incredibly proud of Millie. She does such a fantastic job, and all this documentation, there's so much hard work into this. Thank you, because it's a real joy to work with your business committee, because the effort and the attention to detail is really great. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You stole my limelight. That was what I was just about to say.